Buonasera, welcome back to Le Conversazioni. We have a special event tonight, and I'm very honored and happy to have with me on the stage Nicholas Boggs. Thank you. Nick is the author of this extraordinary book, which just came out recently. And why don't you say what we do with the book tonight?
Well, I'm going to sign Antonio's copy, and there are three more copies available. So the first three people who ask for it afterwards can have free copies.
Among the blurbs, there is one which is quite extraordinary by Zadie Smith. The reviews are fantastic, so congratulations.
Thank you.
Tonight, we have the 6 Forgotten Gems program. I'm sure you're familiar with this program. I ask all my guests to select 3 forgotten gems. I pick 3 other forgotten gems, and we discuss them. And I'm very happy to say that Nick picked not only wonderful films, but really forgotten. I was not so good. At least 2 of my 3 are quite known. Why don't we start with your first choice? We have a long program. Why don't we start with your first clip, and then we start commenting? Nick, I must admit I was a little bit surprised when you... Why did you pick this film, which I love? Don't get me wrong.
Well, first of all, thanks for having me, and thank you everybody for coming. So this is an unusual film for me, and even more so with the clip that you chose, which I love that you chose it because this film was recommended to me. It came out in 1998, which was the year that I moved to New York City, and it's very much a New York film, and the writer Hilton Als recommended it to me. And at this point, I was in my Fassbinder phase of watching. I was watching all of Fassbinder, and so I turned on this film, and there's Danny DeVito, and I was like, what? What is going on here? I was not a Danny DeVito fan, but I did know that Holly Hunter and Queen Latifah were in it, and they're both extraordinary. So is Danny DeVito. It's just an incredibly weird New York film. And at the time, Set It Off had recently come out that Queen Latifah was in, where she played this like really amazingly dykey character, and Latifah was kind of in the closet. But my boyfriend at the time was a bartender at Bardot on Bedford Street, and they had a ladies' night on Monday nights, and I would show up there, and this was for women only, and he'd be behind the bar, and Queen Latifah would come, and when it closed down, as he was mopping up the floors, she would get the mic and sing jazz standards. And that's what she does in this film. She sings Lush Life. She's a cabaret singer at a nightclub where Holly Hunter character goes, who had just been dumped and was lovelorn. She kind of becomes friends with her. DeVito becomes her her porter in the elevator, and they strike up this weird friendship. But I actually got dumped by that bartender, and Holly Hunter had just gotten dumped by her husband. So this is a film that I watch. It's like my feel-good, feel-bad-for-myself, feel-good movie. I own it, and I go back to it, and it takes me back to my youth, and it also kind of warms my heart, and the music is also extraordinary.
Are you familiar with the work of Richard LaGravenese, the director?
No.
Okay. I know him. He's mainly a screenwriter. He was nominated for an Oscar for a film called The Fisher King, maybe you're familiar, by Terry Gilliam. He directed several films, and he wrote several major black blockbusters, including Erin Brockovich, for example, because he got a reputation for writing great female roles. So big stars such as Julia Roberts or others would hire him to rewrite their roles for them. But I'm happy that you pick it because it's a great New York story. Beside your personal attachment to the film, is there anything in particular that you like about it?
I love the way that it kind of meanders as a film. It's very unexpected. It goes into these very strange places. So there's one scene, if I was picking a clip, I probably would have chosen this, although it's a little bit of a misnomer. It's hard to know what it is. So basically, Holly Hunter character becomes really good friends with Queen Latifah, and they're backstage talking about their exes and their boyfriends. Queen Latifah's boyfriend is actually gay. She's finding out, or probably gay. And anyway, there's one scene where they take ecstasy together. And they go out to a nightclub, and it is the most random interjection that has anybody seen this film? Raise your hand. Probably not. Forgotten Gem. Okay. It is one of the most random interjections in film history because suddenly Brownstone is playing. You know that song, "If You Love Me, Say It," that one. And they start dancing around with all these lipstick lesbians, and then it's just Holly Hunter doing this crazy dance, and it's just beautiful and jubilant and random. And I did some of that myself in the 90s in New York City.
Do you like in general Danny DeVito? He's also a good filmmaker.
I actually didn't before this. It kind of made me feel a little ill when I watched him. But I was after, but watching this, even the opening scene. I remember when I watched. That's not the opening scene. That's the first scene that he appears in the film. And that music, that kind of hokey music, and I'm like, oh no, I have to spend 2 hours like watching Danny DeVito like walk around New York. But actually, the relationship between him and the Holly Hunter character is really fascinating because it's not this kind of like usual rom-com where they end up together. They almost do. They're really, it's across class lines. It's sort of they strike up this really beautiful friendship, which I also think does sort of happen in New York City sometimes. These unexpected friendships when you're living so close to each other, or somebody who works in your building or works near your building. It sort of captured something about New York that we don't see that often on film.
Thank you. Let's go now to my first choice, which is a Polish film. I believe that image of the upside-down cross is one of the great images of the era. Andrzej Wajda was a great filmmaker. Among his films, I remember The Man of Marble, The Man of Iron, and in particular Danton. But this is probably his masterpiece, and it has a very unique story because it's based on a novel written in 1948, right after the war, by Jerzy Andrzejewski, which was a book that all the students in Poland were forced to read because it was a strongly ideological, pro-communist, pro-Soviet Union. In the hands of, and that's why the film was made, in the hands of Andrzej Wajda becomes the opposite. It's a satire and is a clear accusation of the communist regime, which is quite unique. The actor was nicknamed the Polish James Dean. and he became sort of a minor sensation in Europe in the 50s and 60s. What makes the film great is the humanist approach that Wajda has. Although it's a story of hitmen, political assassinations, plots, spies, he never judges any of them. But he does judge strongly and fiercely the system, which makes the film unique. Did you know it?
So, I actually watched it as a double feature in college with Night of the Hunter.
Oh, so that's another great film.
Yeah, so I kind of get them. I forgot. I started watching it again. I didn't get all the way through it this time, but I kept Night of the Hunter kept flooding back to me because they both have such incredible imagery and that's visually. Yeah. That's what I remember most about it.
And it's interesting that this is Francis Coppola's favorite film of all times, but also other great filmmakers adore it. From René Clair to Martin Scorsese. I think for several reasons, the visual, the imagery is really strong. The way Wajda portrayed the character. For example, the so-called Polish James Dean is not very different from Ray Liotta and Goodfellas. You don't know if you want to like him or hate him, or both. And this comes from a humanist approach of a man who is longing for grace, for redemption, which I think this makes this film different from any other films made in Poland and in Eastern Europe during that age. If you don't, who knows already this film? Oh, a little bit more, 3. So I strongly recommend to watch it. Let's go now to Nick's second choice. So looking for Langston, the year was 1989, the director, Sir Isaac Julien.
Right, the 1989, and the voiceover that's starting there at the end and carries on for quite some time is Richard Bruce Nugent, who's sort of unsung black queer poet of the Harlem Renaissance. And the 1989 is 2 years after James Baldwin died, and the film also actually begins with what seems to be James Baldwin's funeral with a voiceover of Toni Morrison reading Baldwin's words at his funeral, but it's actually Isaac Julien, the filmmaker, who is in the casket, in the open casket. So the film, this is sort of the height of the AIDS epidemic as well, and it's beautiful film to look at, as you just saw, but it also is very, very political in a sense, because this is the time when gay men, and black gay men in particular, were dying. And it's also about reclaiming these kinds of lost histories. So Langston Hughes famously was sort of perhaps maybe closeted, maybe not. And so the film kind of reconstructs imaginatively across history these different lives. It integrates Essex Hemphill, who died of AIDS. His poetry is there. So for me, this film was very important because it was doing and remained important because I was trying to look at these gaps in Baldwin's love life. That's what the book is about, to understand how these kind of queer relationships impacted his art. And this was one method of kind of addressing these gaps as a filmmaker that Isaac Julien was doing that I found so compelling and so beautiful. Of course, I'm trying to remain rooted in fact in my biography, but I still wanted to bring that kind of energy to what it looks like to go into the archive, right? To go into the spaces that have been erased and try to create a work of art or a book.
Tell me something about Langston Hughes. Do you like his work in general?
Isaac Julien?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, Langston Hughes.
Oh, Langston Hughes. Well, Langston Hughes was very mean to James Baldwin. So
why?
Well, there was this sort of intergenerational competitive thing. Baldwin also had it with Richard Wright, because there was this idea at that moment that there could only be one famous black writer. Of course, he had to be male and he had to be heterosexual. So there was a lot going on in that moment. No, I mean Langston Hughes, is an incredible poet. But he, Isaac Julien wanted to use a lot of his poetry, and the estate blocked him from doing that, and that kind of pushed him to this more kind of imagistic and creative response to it.
And you know why they stopped him? Why it was not possible to use his poem just for
homophobia?
Just homophobia.
Yeah, they knew that this film was going to be delving into these aspects of his life that they weren't comfortable with. But in fact, it was very moving because there are points in the film where you're supposed to hear his poetry, and instead you just get total silence. And so that silence is kind of evoking the erasure that is happening through these kinds of mechanisms through the estate.
And how about Isaac Julien? Do you like his work in general?
I do. I think there were rumors once upon a time that he was, many years ago, that he was going to make Giovanni's Room, Baldwin's novel, into a film. I think Madonna had the rights to it or something. There's a lot of mythology around that. Young Soul Rebels is a fantastic film. His film about Frantz Fanon is also really terrific. So he's very much an artist. He does a lot of installations in museums now and stuff like that, not so much features.
Is it me or I see a resemblance with the work of Steve McQueen, of the early Steve McQueen. Am I right?
Yeah, I think McQueen was his kind of
We're talking
student.
about the artist-director, not the actor, of course.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that McQueen he was mentored by Isaac Julien, so that's very true. There's a lot of, but he crossed over into feature film in a different way, obviously.
And I think his best work was his work as an artist, as a visual artist. Any other film that you would recommend by Isaac Julien? Any other work?
I would go see him in galleries. He has a recent show about Frederick Douglass that has been making the rounds. I'm not sure where it is now. Has anybody here seen that? Yeah, it's really interesting. He does a lot of work with different panels, and it's there have been also shows of looking for Langston that he's brought back with different kind of installation type things. But I really recommend this film. It's a really beautiful, important, I'd say one of the most important films of sort of black British queer cinema, for sure. Like Derek Jarman. Derek Jarman would be another kind of similar artist.
Do you like his work, Jarman?
Oh, God, putting me on the spot.
No.
I like some of his work.
Me too.
Work. Yeah.
He was very uneven. When he was good, was excellent, but sometimes was appalling, I must say.
And he brought us Tilda Swinton, so you know.
Yeah. But the Caravaggio film was interesting, I think.
Yes, that was. And Blue.
Blue
was very interesting, but hard to watch.
Yeah. Okay, let's go to my second choice, which is Austrian-French film. I must confess that for a long time I didn't care. Actually, I should say I didn't like Michael Haneke's film, and I was wrong. He's a great master. At the time, I consider him sadistic, cold, chilly, unpleasant. All these elements are there, but you can see he's a poet at work. Not only in this film, but also in The Pianist, maybe his masterpiece with Isabelle Huppert, The White Ribbon. This sequence is quite extraordinary. You will never understand why this happened. She's just taking a subway, going on a set, and all of a sudden this young kid does what he did. And it's one take, which is a signature for Michael Haneke, and the dignity of the man on the left, it's unforgettable. Also the pain in Juliette Binoche, who at the time was pregnant, by the way. That's why she always wears large, coats or sweaters all through the film. You do not understand what's going on, but you feel what's going on, which is one of the real magic moments of this, magic elements of this film. How do you like Haneke, and in particular this film?
I've always liked him, actually. And I saw this film when it came out, but I forgot that I saw it. So I did watch it all over again, which was really interesting because it is such an unusual film and these different vignettes, kind of. And what I was struck by, recently Juliette Binoche has done these more kind of rom-com-y films. So I've sort of stopped being that interested in her. And this reminded me of what an extraordinary actress she is throughout. The character is actually maybe pregnant in the film, so I didn't know she was actually pregnant. So that's really interesting. No, it just the span of it. It's in Serbia. It's in Paris. It's got an African immigrant narrative that's really powerful as well. I mean, what it accomplishes through these different vignettes cumulatively is pretty amazing.
Any other films by Haneke that you like?
I really like Cachet. I thought that was extremely more of a thriller, but really, really fun. And the Piano Lesson. Yeah, I remember watching that as a kid with my parents, and I did not understand it at the time. And then I went back to see it because my mother taught piano lessons, so it was a little traumatizing. But no, I'm a big fan. I haven't seen White Ribbon, but I've heard good things about it.
The void that I felt watching his films, I realized after a while that was a longing for something. It's a void that needs to be filled. And this is what Haneke is telling us. Actually, it's the opposite of a sadist. It's a man in search of mercy. And I like that.
Yeah, it's sort of, I think, different from Lars von Trier in that way.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I'm still on the first phase with von Trier. Maybe in 10 years I like him. We'll see. Let's go now to the third choice by Nick. Jerome Hill, film Portrait. Why did you pick this film?
Very forgotten. So Jerome Hill he won an Oscar for Best Documentary in 1957 for a documentary he did about Albert Schweitzer.
Yeah.
This was from 1971. He was responsible for anthology film archives. He came from a very wealthy family who built railroads in Minnesota and was fabulously wealthy. So Jonas Mekas, he funded most of Jonas Mekas' work. He really helped found Interview magazine. He lived this sort of fabulous life, and he started a foundation that was the Avon Foundation, then the Carmauga Foundation, and they have an artist residency in Cassis, France, where I've been a few times, and that's where I've started to become interested in him. He was gay, but sort of not fully out, and yet that is explored in really interesting, beautiful ways in this film. But what's really interesting to me about this film is it's a film that is an autobiography, but it's also the history of cinema and moving image, because the first clip ever that was played ever of a film clip was at the train station close to Cassis, and and he shows that, and he shows it again, and he became friends with Brigitte Bardot and Julia Childs and Vanessa Bell. I mean, it's just, you name it. This was part of this sort of fabulous life. His life partner was Charles Radel, who was part of Andy Warhol's Factory. So he was a filmmaker, a painter, a conductor, huge supporter of the arts. Huge, yeah. And so this film, I think, is very interesting in terms of autobiography, documentary, and the history of like you could see how his family was already working in photographs and moving them and animating them. So I think it's actually in the permanent collections at the MoMA, and it's being remastered right now, and I think it'll be re-released for the public in 2027. So I'm hoping to write something about him. So that's why I chose him, because I thought you would know everything about him, and I'd be getting some information.
Let me ask you a couple of things. Do you remember the first time you saw it?
I do. The first time I saw it was when I was in residency at Camargo, where James Baldwin also has spent some time, actually. And I didn't actually get it. I mean, this was 20 years ago, or close to 15 years ago. And I was like, what is this? You know, it was very confusing at first.
And if I ask you bluntly, which role played the film in your life?
Well, I think spending time there, I've gone back several times, but also my next project is sort of more about memoir and stuff like that, and autobiography, and trying to find different kinds of forms to talk about gay, queer desire and coming out and all that. So his life interests me. He also went to Yale. I went to Yale. He left like Baldwin did. He fled to Europe because of homophobia, and yet unlike Baldwin, he was fabulously wealthy. So he kind of like, I feel like I'm situated somehow in the middle of these two figures in time and in everything else. So I'm not sure if I'm going to write. I think I'm going to write more like an essay about him, but in terms of my next book projects, I find him very inspiring.
As a writer, do you think that the language of images is replacing the language of words or influencing?
Oh, wow. In our culture right now, I mean, yes.
And in particular, in you, as you.
Oh, for me?
As a writer, yes.
No. I will always be wedded to. I mean, one funny thing about when I go to these artist residencies, the other writers show up with laptops, right? And I show up with my pickup truck and all these things full of archives because I need all paper. I have all the books with me. So everybody thinks I'm a visual artist when I show up at these residencies. And in a way I am, because the way that I work is I don't even write for the first couple of weeks. I just storyboard on large canvases. And that's kind of it's a version of what visual artists do. So writing is visual.
Once I interviewed William Friedkin, the great filmmaker, great director of French Connection, The Exorcist, and many others. And I asked him, is there anything that films can do better than novels or words? And he said, yes, for example, chase sequences. It's possibly true. Do you agree? Is there anything that films can do better than words, or vice versa?
I think what films can't really do, and this has been said by many people, but I think it's true, is that it cannot really, as much as it tries, get inside the mind. It cannot get into consciousness. It can try, and I think actually, in a way, this more experimental approaches of looking for Langston or film portrait do a job of that. But I think I don't think it can do what novels or just memoir, autobiography can do.
That's why I agree with you. That's why great novelists whose struggle is all intimate, is all interior. It's difficult to adapt them on the screen. Think of Dostoevsky, for example. You know.
Well, yes, and famously, Giovanni's Room could not be adapted because, in part, because it's so interior. It's first person, David, this closeted man. All the drama is really internal, and how do you externalize that into film? It's a real challenge.
Let's go now to my final choice, which is an Italian film. Life comes back after a moment of poetry. What makes unique Fellini's films is that there is always a moment where the narrative stops and he dances. He enjoys the moment that he creates and he wants to share that moment with us. In terms of narrative, this scene has no meaning, but it's beautiful. And once again, it says a lot about that world. It's a moment of enchantment. Think of, I know there are a few students of mine in my Italian cinema class, that scene in the Vitelloni when Franco Fabrizi comes back and he starts dancing in the street. It's very similar. There is no reason for that scene, but there is an artistic, poetic reason. Do you like Fellini's work and did you know this film?
I did not know this film, but I absolutely loved it. I watched it with my partner, Marlon. We both loved it. So thank you for introducing it to us. I was really curious which scene you would choose because there are so many amazing scenes, including just the opening sequence when it goes from black and white to color and it becomes an opera. It's
all filmed in Cinecittà.
Yeah.
All fake.
It's stunning, and then also the scene under in the coal under the ship. I mean, it's a fantastic film. So thank you very much for that.
I thank you. The film was a flop, was a complete fiasco at the box office, but I think it's a beautiful fiasco, and I thank Fellini, and I think especially a pasta maker called Aldo Nemni, who put a fortune on this film, and he lost all his money. It's part of becoming an artist, sharing art with people. It's time to go, but we have a tradition here. Since we always select quite sad films, we end with a comic relief. And this is a scene that I picked from an American film. I think it's besides Living Out Loud, it's the only American film that's with screen. I think it's a beautiful film, American Graffiti. Lucas is a man who created a universe. You might like it or dislike him, but he's responsible for Star Wars. But before Star Wars, he made these beautiful pictures about the 60s. And he never loved directing. Apparently, his actors complained because the only indication he would give them was faster, slower. That's it. But again, he's a man who changed the movies. Okay, it's time to go. I want to thank you all. I'll see you here back at Casa Italiana on December 11th with Brian Selznick. I want to thank Nick Boggs and congratulations.